He wasn't rich. He wasn't famous. He didn't come from power. He came from Queens, from a small apartment, from a family of immigrants, with a voice full of truth and a heart full of fire. His name? Zohran Mamdani. Some called him a dreamer. Some called him dangerous. But one thing was clear. He would not stay silent. Not in the streets. Not in the assembly. Not in history. This is the story of a boy who became a voice. A voice that dared to speak when others stayed quiet. Chapter 1. The Boy from Queens. He was born in New York City, but his story started far away. Uganda, India, Islam. All of them lived inside him. His name? Zohran Mamdani. A name full of history. A name many people could not pronounce. But he wore it with pride. He grew up in Queens, one of the most diverse places in the world. On one street, people spoke Spanish. On the next, Arabic. Then Bengali, Mandarin, Greek. Queens was a world inside a city. Zohran's home was small, but full of culture. His father was from Uganda. His mother? A famous Indian actress and writer. They told him stories about Africa. They read him poems from India. They taught him to speak the truth and never fear it. At school, things were different. He was the brown boy, the Muslim kid. Some kids laughed at his name. Some teachers asked, "Where are you really from?" He would smile. But deep inside, it hurt. He wanted to fit in. But he also wanted to be himself. Every day, he walked between two worlds. At home, he heard prayers in Arabic. At school, he sang the U.S. national anthem. At the mosque, he learned respect. On the street, he learned to be tough. He started asking big questions. Why do people treat each other differently? Why do poor people live in small homes, while rich people live in tall ones? Why do some kids have everything, and others nothing? One day, he heard something on the radio. It was rap music. Fast, loud, angry, real. The rapper was talking about injustice, about life in the streets, about pain and pride. Zohran was shocked. "Wait, this is like poetry," he said, "but with fire." From that day, he began to write. Little rhymes, little beats, little truths. He hid his notebook under his bed, not because it was bad, but because it was his heart. Sometimes, late at night, he rapped to himself, quietly, in the dark. People say I don't belong, but I've been here all along. My roots are deep. My name is strong. He didn't know it then, but those rhymes were the start of something bigger. One afternoon, he saw a man shouting in the park, a politician, making promises, smiling too much. Zohran watched. He listened, and he thought, he doesn't know what it's like to live here. That thought stayed with him, day after day, year after year. Queens was not perfect. Many families were poor, rent was high, jobs were few. But people worked hard. They loved their homes. They fought to stay. Zohran saw it all. He felt it in his bones, and something inside him whispered, "Maybe I can speak for them." But how? He was just a boy, a rapper, a Muslim kid from Queens. Could someone like him enter politics? Could someone like him be heard? He didn't have rich friends. He didn't wear suits. He didn't talk like the men on TV. But he had something else, something powerful. He had a voice, and he had a story. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. Chapter 2. A Beat and a Dream. It started with a sound, a beat, a rhythm, a fire. Zohran was just a teenager. His world was full of questions, full of noise, full of change. But when he heard rap music, something happened. His heart beat faster, his eyes opened wider, and his mind started to dream. This was not just music. It was power. It was truth. It was real. He listened to artists like Nas, Talib Kweli, Mos Def, voices from the streets, voices of protest, voices with something to say. And Zohran? He wanted to say something too. He sat in his room, alone, with a pen and paper. He didn't have a mic. He didn't have a studio. But he had something more important. He had something to say. He started to write. One line, then two, then four. Why are my people always last? Why is my name from the past? They call me other, say I'm strange, but I'm just part of the change. His words were simple, but they were full of fire. He rapped about being brown, being Muslim, being proud, being angry. His voice was soft at first, but with every rhyme, he grew louder, stronger, braver. He performed for friends, then at open mics, small cafes, community centers, parks. People clapped. They listened. Some even cried, because his words were their words too. He rapped about injustice, about racism, about broken schools, about police violence, about living in a world where your name, your skin, your God could make you a target. He said what others were afraid to say, and people listened. But Zohran didn't just want to perform. He wanted to change things. Words are powerful, he thought. But what if I can turn words into action? That's when something inside him shifted. He looked at politics, not with hate, but with hope. Could rap and politics work together? Could a microphone and a law book fight the same fight? He remembered a line from his own song. Not every fighter holds a gun. Some fight with words. Some fight for the sun. He knew what he had to do. He didn't stop rapping. But he started learning too. He read books. He joined protests. He knocked on doors for local candidates. He listened to people in the streets. He asked questions like, what do you need? What do you dream of? What do you fear? He wasn't trying to be famous. He wasn't chasing likes or money. He was chasing justice. And slowly, his rap became more than music. It became a movement. One day, after a long meeting at a local housing group, a woman said to him, "You should run for office." He laughed. "Me? I'm a rapper, a broke organizer, not a politician." But the woman smiled. You speak the truth. That's what we need. Her words stayed in his mind, like a beat, again and again. You speak the truth. That's what we need. That night, Zohran couldn't sleep. What if? What if he could do more? What if he could use his voice? Not just for songs, but for laws? Could a young Muslim rapper from Queens become a leader? Could he turn the pain of the streets into power in the state? He sat by his window. The city lights below, the beat still in his ears, and he whispered to himself, maybe it's time. Chapter 3. A different kind of campaign. It began with no money, no big signs, no rich donors, no party bosses behind him, just one thing. A dream. Zohran Mamdani wanted to run for office, but not like the others. Not with fake smiles, not with empty promises. He wanted to run with truth. But how? He was young. He was brown. He was Muslim. He had never done this before. People laughed. They said, "Politics is not for people like you. You don't have the look. You don't have the money. You don't have the name." But Zohran smiled. "I have the people," he said. And he was right. He began knocking on doors. 1, 2, 10, 100. In the hot sun, in the cold wind, again and again. "Hi, my name is Zohran," he said. "I'm not backed by big money. I'm backed by you." Some people closed the door. Some looked confused. But many stayed and listened. He spoke with the tired mother in a small apartment, the taxi driver working 2 jobs, the student with no health insurance, the old man whose rent kept going up. He listened to their pain. He listened to their fear. He listened and promised to fight. He didn't wear suits. He didn't have a fancy office, but he had friends, volunteers, dreamers. They made signs by hand. They printed flyers at home. They shared videos online. They called it the People's Campaign. While other candidates held big dinners at hotels, Zohran held town halls in parks, while others took photos with CEOs. Zohran took selfies with school kids. His words were clear, his eyes were honest, and his heart was open. But the road was hard. Very hard. Big newspapers ignored him. The TV didn't show his face. Even his own party didn't support him. But the streets were speaking. "You know what?" people said. "He's one of us." They started telling their neighbors and their friends and their families. Soon, something strange happened. The man with no money, no power, no support, became a real threat. His opponent, a well-known politician, a favorite of the party, with big signs and bigger pockets. But Zohran had something stronger. He had hope, and he had people who believed. They knocked on more doors. They handed out more flyers. They talked to everyone. One woman said, "I've lived here 30 years. No one ever knocked on my door, until Zohran did. He gave speeches in 3 languages, English, Urdu, Bengali, because he didn't want anyone to feel left out. The night before the election, he stood with his team, tired, nervous, but proud. They looked at each other and said, "No matter what happens, we already won." Because they did something big, something brave. They made people feel seen. They made people believe again. Then came the vote. Tick, tick, tick. The results came in slowly, the numbers rising, people watching, waiting, praying, and then victory. Zohran won. Not by money, not by power, but by trust, by knocking, by listening, by caring. The crowd cheered. Tears fell. He stood on a small stage and said, "This win is not just mine. It belongs to every person who was told they are not enough." That night, in Queens, something changed. A message was sent across New York and the world. You don't need to be rich to make a difference. You just need to believe. But winning the election was only the beginning. Chapter 4. Victory in Astoria. It was a warm night in Astoria. People stood together, young, old, women in hijab, men in work boots. Some held phones, some held hope. They were waiting for the results. And waiting is hard. Zohran stood in the back, quiet, still. His heart was loud, but his mouth said nothing. He looked around the room. These were his people, not rich, not famous, but strong, brave, full of fire. They had walked the streets with him, knocked on doors, made signs, fought for every single vote. And now, it was time. A screen in the corner showed the numbers, slow at first, then rising. His opponent in the lead, then Zohran, catching up, then neck and neck. People held their breath. Some whispered prayers. Others stared in silence. Then, a cheer broke the room. Zohran is ahead. Look, he's winning. He's going to do it. Zohran blinked. Was it real? Was this happening? His hands shook. He looked at his phone. He looked at his friends. One of them nodded. It's real. You did it. Zohran took a deep breath. His knees felt weak, but his heart stood tall. He walked slowly to the front. People made space. Phones turned toward him. Tears fell. Smiles grew wide. He stepped up on a small wooden chair. Not a big stage, not a fancy hall, just a chair. In a room full of dreams. He looked at them, at his neighbors, at his community, at his family of fighters. Then he spoke. I was told this was impossible. They said, "You don't look like a politician. You don't have the money. You're too young. You're too Muslim." He paused. The room held its breath. But look at us now. Cheers. This is not my win. This is yours. This is for every person who was ignored, every voice that was not heard. Tonight, that voice is loud. Claps. Tears. Hugs. One woman held her child and said, "Look, baby, that man looks like us." The child smiled, eyes full of wonder. Across Astoria, the news spread fast. Zohran Mamdani wins. The people's candidate shocks the city. Muslim socialist takes assembly seat. The media didn't see it coming. The big parties didn't see it coming. But the people, they saw it. They made it happen. In homes and cafes, people cried. Finally, someone who knows our life. Someone who listens. Someone who cares. For Zohran, it felt like a dream. But it was real. The emails, the calls, the interviews. Suddenly, he was in the spotlight. But deep inside, he stayed calm. This wasn't about being famous. It was about being useful. He walked home that night. No car, no camera, just him. The streets were quiet, but his mind was loud. He remembered the kids who said, "Can I be like you one day?" He remembered the elders who said, "You give us hope." He whispered to himself, "Tomorrow, the work begins." Because winning an election is easy compared to what comes next. Could he stay true? Could he keep his promises? Could he carry the hopes of a whole neighborhood? He didn't know all the answers, but he knew one thing. He would try with everything he had. Chapter 5. The Muslim in the Room. He walked through the big doors, and everything changed. Marble floors, tall ceilings, cold walls. This was the New York State Capitol, the place where laws are made, where power lives. And now, Zohran Mamdani was in the room. He wore a suit, he had a badge, but inside he was still Zohran, the rapper, the son of immigrants, the fighter from Queens. As he walked in, people stared. Some smiled politely, some didn't smile at all. He could feel it, the silence, the eyes, the questions. Who is he? Is he really a lawmaker? Is that his real name? Is he dangerous? He was the first South Asian Muslim ever elected to the New York Assembly. And it showed. He prayed differently. He looked different. He didn't come from money. He didn't hide his faith. Sometimes he wore a kufi. Sometimes he said, "Assalamu alaikum." And yes, sometimes that made people uncomfortable. But he didn't care. He was not there to make others comfortable. He was there to make change. Still, it wasn't easy. Some lawmakers ignored him. Some made small jokes. One even asked, "Do you speak English at home?" He stayed calm. He answered with respect. But deep inside, it hurt. He thought, "I worked so hard to get here, but now I must work even harder to be accepted." In meetings, he raised his hand. He asked questions about housing, healthcare, police violence. Some rolled their eyes. Some whispered, "He's too radical." he doesn't understand the system. But Zohran understood more than they knew. He understood pain. He understood hunger. He understood what it meant to be unseen, unheard, unwanted. He spoke for the people who were not in the room, the mothers working 3 jobs, the students with no support, the immigrants without a voice. And slowly, things began to change. One day, a janitor walked up to him and said, "Thank you. My son saw you on TV. He said, 'Dad, he looks like me.' Another time, a Muslim intern said, 'I wear my scarf now with pride because of you.' These words gave him strength. Yes, it was hard. Yes, he felt alone. But he was not alone. He was the door. And behind him, thousands were waiting to walk through. Still, some days were heavy. One afternoon, a protest broke out. People were angry. A politician blamed Zohran, said his words were too strong, said he was dividing people. Zohran stood tall. He said, "No, I'm not dividing. I'm telling the truth, and the truth can be uncomfortable." The room went quiet, but in that silence, there was respect, not from everyone, but from some. And that was enough, for now. He ended that day in his office. It was small, the desk was messy, but the window showed the city, his city. He looked out and whispered, "I am the Muslim in the room, and I am staying." Because power was not about suits, or titles, or handshakes. Power was truth, and courage, and love for the people. He had all 3. But the road ahead, still full of battles. Chapter 6. Speaking Up for Palestine. It was a quiet morning until he spoke. Zohran stood in the assembly. His voice was calm, but his words, they were like thunder. Palestinians deserve freedom. They deserve safety. They deserve life. Some people looked down. Some looked shocked. Others looked angry. He had just crossed a line many were afraid to cross. But Zohran? He wasn't afraid. He had seen the videos. He had read the news. He had heard the cries of children under bombs. And he asked himself, if I don't speak, who will? So he stood, in front of cameras, in front of lawmakers, in front of the world. And he said what others only whispered. It is not hate to ask for justice. It is not wrong to say, stop killing, stop taking homes, stop the silence. That day, everything changed. Supporters called him brave. Thank you for saying what we feel. Finally, someone tells the truth. But not everyone was happy. Emails poured in, calls from media, angry tweets, death threats. Some called him a traitor. Some called him anti-Semitic. Some said, go back to your country. He sat alone that night, his phone buzzing, his heart heavy. He looked at the messages, the hate, the pain, the danger. Then he closed his eyes and remembered a child's voice in a video, crying, under dust, asking, "Why?" And he whispered, "This is why I speak." Next morning, he went back to work. He didn't hide. He didn't step back. In fact, he stepped forward. He joined protests. He held the Palestinian flag. He listened to students. He visited mosques. He spoke to Jewish friends who also wanted peace. He said, "This is not about religion. It's about human rights. We can love both people. We can want safety for all." Some colleagues avoided him. Some told him to stop. "Focus on local issues," they said. "Don't bring foreign problems here." But Zohran answered, "Justice has no borders." He knew the cost. He knew he might lose support. He knew doors might close. But he also knew something else. Silence is not neutral. It is a choice, and he chose to speak. Because when bombs fall on Gaza and children die in their beds and the world turns its face away, he could not. He stood in the assembly again, this time stronger, this time with more voices behind him. Muslims, Jews, Christians, atheists, black, brown, white, all saying one thing: end the occupation, end the violence, let the people live. But will the world listen? Will power hear the cries of the powerless? Zohran doesn't know. No one does. But what he knows is this: one voice can break the silence, and many voices can shake the world. That's why he keeps going. That's why he keeps speaking, even when it's hard, even when it's lonely, even when it hurts, because some truths must be said, even if it costs you everything. Chapter 7. Fighting for the People. He didn't stop, not after the hate, not after the threats, not after the cameras turned away, because Zohran Mamdani had made a promise to his neighbors, to his city, to the people no one listened to. He was not in politics for power. He was there to fight. And he fought for one thing again and again: dignity. Dignity to live, to learn, to stay. Let's start with housing. In Astoria, rents were rising fast, too fast. One-bedroom apartments cost more than some people made in a month. Old families were pushed out. Landlords raised prices. Developers built luxury towers. But where could the working class go? Zohran walked those streets. He saw the fear in people's eyes. He heard the stories. One woman said, "My mother died in this apartment, and now they want to kick me out." Zohran stood in front of a crowd and said, "Housing is a right, not a prize for the rich." He fought to stop evictions, to build public housing, to protect tenants from greedy landlords. Was it easy? Number? Did he win every time? Number? But he showed up. He stood up. And that meant something. Now, let's talk about schools. In his district, some schools had broken windows, leaking roofs, not enough teachers, not enough books, not enough hope. And across the city, private schools with swimming pools and music rooms. Zohran asked, "How can we say every child is equal when their schools are not?" He pushed for more money in public schools. He visited classrooms. He sat with students. He listened to teachers who cried from stress. He said, "If we want a better future, we must build it in the classroom." And the third fight? Maybe the hardest one. Justice for immigrants. New York is full of stories. Stories from Bangladesh, Egypt, Mexico, Ghana, Morocco. Families came here for a better life, but many lived in the shadows, afraid, invisible. Zohran knew this world. He was the child of immigrants. He had lived between two cultures. He had felt the fear. He spoke out in the assembly. "No human being is illegal," he said. "People move because they must, not because they want to leave home." He fought for driver's licenses for undocumented people, for health care, for language access, for safety from police violence. And still, people said, "You're too loud. You're too radical. Just do your job." But this was his job, to say what others would not say, to fight the fights others ran away from. Sometimes he felt tired. Sometimes he felt alone. But then, a child waved to him on the street. A taxi driver thanked him with a free ride. A woman from Yemen said, "You give me hope." And that was fuel. Fuel for the fire inside him. He didn't win every vote. He didn't change every law. But he showed people that someone was on their side. Someone was not afraid. Because fighting for the people means more than making speeches. It means feeling their pain and carrying their voice into places where it was never heard before. So, what comes next? Can one man change a system built by the powerful? Can hope survive inside cold government walls? Zohran didn't have all the answers, but he knew the truth. You don't need to be perfect to fight. You just need to care, enough to try. Chapter 8. Backlash and Bravery. They told him to stop. They told him to stay quiet. They told him, "You're going too far." But Zohran Mamdani didn't listen. He had spoken for the poor, for immigrants, for Palestinians, for justice. And now? The backlash had begun. Emails came, hundreds, some full of anger, some full of hate. "You're anti-American. You should be arrested. Go back to where you came from." Some messages had no words, only threats, only fear. He got phone calls at night, unknown numbers, heavy breathing, silence, then hate. He received a package at his office, no name, just a note that said, "Watch your back." His team was scared. His family was worried. Even friends said, "Maybe slow down. Maybe take a break." But Zohran stood tall. He looked at them and said, "If I stop now, what was the point of starting? Because the fight was not about him. It was about the people who could not speak, who had no camera, no microphone, no protection. So he kept going. He walked the streets of Astoria. He held hands with old neighbors. He sat with young boys who felt lost. He listened to stories of fear and turned them into courage. And still, the pressure grew stronger. Some politicians turned against him. The same ones who smiled before now said, "He's dangerous. He's not one of us. He's dividing the community." But Zohran asked, "Am I dividing, or am I just telling the truth?" He gave a speech. It wasn't on TV. It wasn't loud, but it was powerful. He said, "You call me angry? Yes, I am. I'm angry because families are losing homes, because children go to school hungry, because my people are treated like strangers in their own city." The room was quiet. No claps, no cheers, just silence. And sometimes silence is louder than words. But not all silence is bad, because in that silence, others were listening. A group of students sent him letters. One wrote, "I didn't believe in politics until I saw you." A teacher from another state said, "My class talks about you. You give them hope." A woman whispered in passing, "Please, don't stop." And he didn't. Because bravery is not about being fearless. It's about standing while afraid. He felt the fear. Yes, he felt it in his stomach, in his bones, in the way his hands shook sometimes before speaking. But he spoke anyway. He went to rallies. He visited shelters. He showed up in courtrooms, standing beside people who had no lawyer. And every time he stood, he grew stronger. Because each act of hate was met with more love. Each threat with more support. Each lie with more truth. He started carrying a notebook again, like when he was a teenager. He wrote rhymes. He wrote pain. He wrote power. One night, he wrote, "They want me quiet, but I am a storm, not because I'm loud, but because I will not leave." So, what does it mean to be brave? Is it running into danger? Is it shouting in the streets? Maybe. But sometimes, bravery is staying in the room when everyone wants you gone. And Zohran? He stayed. Chapter 9. Zohran's Promise. He stood on a small stage. No lights, no music, just people listening. Young people, old people, mothers, fathers, students, workers, dreamers. They had come to hear him speak, but he didn't want to talk like a politician. He wanted to talk like a brother. He looked at the crowd, took a breath, and began. "I wasn't born for politics," he said. "I was just a boy from Queens, a kid with a notebook, a kid who loved rap, a kid who asked too many questions." People smiled. They knew that kid. Some were that kid. He continued. "I never thought I would be here, speaking in government buildings, writing laws, carrying voices, But now I am here. And I am here because people believed, not in my suit, not in my background, but in my voice. He paused, looked around the room. His eyes stopped on a group of teenagers in the front row. He pointed gently and said, "And now, it's your turn." The room went quiet. He spoke slower, softer, but each word was heavy. You are not too young. You are not too poor. You are not too loud, or too brown, or too Muslim, or too different. You are not alone. You are the power. You are the future. And this world will not change unless you change it. One girl wiped her eyes. A boy nodded, holding a notebook in his hand, just like Zohran used to. "Don't wait for permission," Zohran said. "Don't wait for someone to open the door. Kick it open." The room laughed, but it wasn't a joke. He meant every word. People will say you can't. They'll say, you don't belong. They'll say, it's too hard. Smile and prove them wrong. Speak your truth, even when your voice shakes, even when your hands tremble, even when the room is full of silence. He looked up. His voice grew stronger. They tried to silence me. They tried to scare me. They tried to push me out. But I stayed. Not because I'm special, not because I'm brave every day, but because I remember this. He pointed to his heart. The people are with me, and I am with the people. He stepped down from the stage. The crowd stood, clapping, crying, smiling. But Zohran wasn't looking for applause. He walked toward the teens in the front row. One of them said, "How did you do it? How did you keep going?" He smiled. "I didn't do it alone," he said. "I had help. I had hope. And now I have you." He handed them his pen. It was old, scratched, but it still worked. "Go write something," he said. "Write a speech, write a poem, write a law, write your future." They took the pen with shaking hands, but their eyes were shining. And that was Zohran's promise, to pass the fire, to light the next candle, to never let the light die. Because leadership is not about power. It's about passing the torch from hand to hand, heart to heart, generation to generation. So, will they carry the flame? Will they speak the truth? Will they build the world Zohran dreamed of? We don't know yet, but one thing is clear. He made them believe they could.